And welcome to WBAI. It's 2 p.m. I'm Paul Durienzo. The next hour, we have an interesting show for you here on the WBAI Radio Pop-Up Shop, a discussion with Dr. Frank Romano, who was one of the passengers, activists aboard the Sumud Global Flotilla, which attempted to go to Gaza and was intercepted in international waters. So we're getting Frank on the line right now. You should know him. He's a New Yorker, playwright, actor, well-known, and we are going to come back to you after this short musical break. We are lucky enough to have on board our ship of state, the radio station WBAI here in New York City, Dr. Frank Romano, who is a retired assistant tenured professor at the Université Paris Nanterre, Anglo-American Literature and Civilization Department, a professional actor. He had a starring role in a recent theater production off-Broadway, playing the lead role of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian and double agent during World War II who was executed eventually for his anti-Nazi activities during the Third Reich. I saw that play, a wonderful play, and that's how I got to meet Dr. Romano. And so we have him with us on the radio right now. Are you there, Dr. Frank Romano?
I'm here.
Great. Good to hear you. So, wow, you're back. Where are you right now?
I'm in Paris. Last time after, as you know, I'm the owner of the Hondola, and I asked to be deported to Paris because this is where I live. I work and also live in New York part of the time, but Israel insisted last time to deport me to New York. Then I had to grovel to get to Paris. So I'm in Paris now in my home.
Uh-huh. And so how long have you been back at home?
Been here about 3 days. 3 days.
Where were you? So 3 days. So basically you were 3 days ago in transit from being in an Israeli prison.
Right. What happened was instead of taking us to the airport like they did with the Hondola, they were so numerous, or for whatever other reasons, they massed us together and took us to the Allenby Gate, which is the Jordan-Israeli border, dumped us off over the border, and just, that was it. And we were in a customs area when some of the members of our consulates came to pick us up and try to arrange things. The American consulate really didn't do much at all, however.
You would expect that. So tell us, yeah. Let's roll back the clock and tell us about the reason for your involvement in this and how it began. How did you get involved with this flotilla and on this dangerous, adventurous, incredible voyage, really, that occurred of hundreds of people trying to get aid to Gaza? How did this all begin with you?
It all began, Paul, in 2005. I had this dream I should go in and do something in Palestine. I went in to Israel and worked on interfaith stuff, and then went into Palestine and the West Bank and realized, wow, that dream was true. That's what I should be doing. And then I started working. I speak Arabic, so I started working with the Bedouins east of Jerusalem. And it became an epicenter. It's called El Khana Akhma. It's like an epicenter for the Palestinian resistance, surrounded by settlements. And the settlers want that land because if they got the land, the Bedouins were on it, they would, for more intents and purposes, cut off the north and the south. So divide the West Bank into two and not allow Palestinians to leave from Jerusalem to go there. So it'd be all pocketed up. We resisted, got in front of a bulldozer. I was thrown into Muscovia prison. And from there, I was released because I was beat up in prison and treated badly. And even though I'd committed a couple felonies, I obstructed a bulldozer.
Who beat you up in prison?
The guards, I'm French American. The guards could not beat me up and put me in that infamous torture chamber they have there in Muscovia. So they put me in a cell with these crazy, probably they were convicted of murder Jewish prisoners because that was their rule. Couldn't go with the Palestinians, and they started beating me up. And the judge found that out. The next day I was supposed to go to trial. Well, they took me out. The guards had to take me. I was raising a ruckus. They took me out of there. I was bleeding and injured and put me in solitary. The next day I was supposed to go to trial. Make a long story short, Paul, instead of taking me to trial there in Jerusalem where my lawyer was and there was media and friends and stuff and witnesses, the police put me in an unmarked car, took me to Tel Aviv and wanted me to sign a paper to get out of the country to deport. And I'm a lawyer. I don't sign anything that I can't understand because it was in Hebrew. And I didn't want to admit that I committed any crime because to me, I was defending the Palestinians and defending myself. The second crime I was convicted of was pushing an Israeli prisoner, Israeli policeman, because they're very rough with you, and I was not resisting. So anyway, make a long story short, judge found out about it in Jerusalem, got me back in Jerusalem, went on trial, ordered and acquitted me because I'd been so badly treated, and then told me to return to France in 10 days, which I didn't. I went into hiding in Ramallah. And I don't want to make this too extensive, Paul, but it's kind of weird because the PA, the Palestinian Authority, the government of the West Bank, wanted me to lead a team to file a complaint against Netanyahu for war crimes secretly. I, of course, agreed because I was underground. I had nothing else to do. And I'm an international lawyer, so I said yes. After 2 months, we had the complaint ready. The PA refused to file it. I grabbed it, went back into hiding. 3 weeks later, the Mossad somehow found out where I was hiding, and they deported me. They got me out of the country and deported me immediately. But I filed the complaint 5 years ago for war crimes against Netanyahu and his accomplices. And only recently, and I asked for arrest warrants. It looks like a roundabout. I'll get right to your question, though, because this does indicate why I went on the flotilla. Anyway, just recently, as you know, the arrest warrants were issued. 5 years after I was requesting arrest warrants, the ICC had to wait for a full-blown genocide to do what it's got to do. So what is that? Why am I in the flotilla? Because I have a 10-year ban that's up in 2029. There's no way I can get back in. The only way is through the sea. And so when I heard about the flotilla, I latched onto it. But Paul, I've been involved since Istanbul. We were in Istanbul. I waited there 3 months to get on a boat. It was blocked. Then I went to Malta, and as you probably know, the Conscience was bombed, so I couldn't get on that boat. Then Thiago, the head of the FCC movement, sent me to Augusta to work on the Madeleine. And the Madeleine, I was on the Madeleine ready to launch 2 hours before it launched out of Catania. They kicked me off because they have a rule. They needed another journalist who had just showed up, so I had to give up my place to a journalist. I was depressed. Then they said, why don't you go work on the gondola then? I said, fine, but you have to promise the next boat out, FFC boat out to Gaza, I'm on it, made a deal, set up the gondola, and we launched. It was, I think it was July 20th, and then we were intercepted, and then went to jail again and hunger strike, went back home to Paris, was very tired, and then he called me up for the flotilla, the Global Sumud Flotilla, and one of my friends did, and he didn't lecture me saying, look, Romano, you've been talking to the press about opening up the People's Corridor, then breaking the siege. Well, the Madeleine did it, and the gondola followed it. But you've been also saying the dream is to have a massive number of boats coming. Now is your chance, Romano. And so all right, I was tired. I was still kind of recouping, but I went to Barcelona, felt the energy, saw people that I knew, people that had been on the gondola, that had been in jail, and I went, yep, the energy's here, and I'm going to do it. And I got to do it, and it's nothing about heroism or anything like that. It's an obligation. I have many friends and people I know in Gaza and the West Bank, and they're my brothers and sisters, and you got to do something. If they weren't my brothers and sisters, and we have an opportunity to help a country that's subject to a full-blown vicious genocide, you do what you can. So that I had to keep going no matter what, Paul, and this was an opportunity to get into Gaza because I can't go by land, I'm banned. And to get in, see my friends, bring them water, food, medication, and boost their morale, and away we went.
And so what's it like to be on a flotilla boat on this trip? How long did it take? It seemed a lot longer. There was rendezvous along the way, and it grew larger and larger, it seemed almost by the day. What was it like to be on the high seas heading towards Gaza this time?
Well, getting to Barcelona, and I have some really great connections there, but there's no guarantee you're going to stay on the boat. So I fought hard and worked hard. So it was really hard. There are 20 boats lined up, not one boat this time. And
how many? I'm sorry? How many boats?
Yeah, there were about 20 boats when I got there lined up. I think there were fewer boats that could go. They weren't ready. But there were about 20. And then, of course, we joined up and we ended up with with over 40 boats finally getting into the Gazan waters. But it was very hard. And this took almost a month as opposed to a 6, 7 day sea trip in the gondola, which was still very challenging and the preparations and everything. But this was, you're right, we stopped in Mallorca. We had to get supplies. There are issues between us. So some of the crews, you have to have a harmonious crew and participants in the boat. You're in very close quarters, and it's very, very tough. And we left at night in high seas. You talk about 6, 7, I don't know about 6, 7 meter, but they were 6, 7 foot, maybe 2 or 3 meter waves. We were all sick the first night, but I love it to start out that way because you get your sea legs. Now you're set.
Yeah, talk about sea legs. What do you mean by sea legs?
Yeah, even seamen that have been going to the high seas, and we're talking about 30, 70 foot swells that are preparing to take a boat out of New York, for instance, like merchant mariners and things. They get sick. And what they do, the first 2 days of high waves, they get sick, and then you get used to it. Your body, your inner ear gets used to it. And the proof is when you leave the boat or on land, the land's moving. So you adjust and you don't get sick anymore. Getting your sea legs mean you're getting used to it and you're not getting seasick anymore.
I see. So you traveled then from Barcelona to Mallorca. Tell us the trip. How did it go?
Yeah, that was tough. You have to leave as soon as you can. They said, well, let's leave in the morning. The seas will be coming. When you're ready, you've got to leave because there have been so many incidences. The Global Sumud Flotilla learned from the FF, the Freedom Flotilla, which I was part of on the gondola, that you got to get out of Dodge when you can immediately because you can be held in port forever. In other words, the Zionist entities can come and pay off the port authorities millions and keep you there forever. You have to have a flag from a country to leave, and an insurance. They can pull the insurance, they can pull the flag. So I agreed, let's leave. And it happened to be something like midnight when we all left. And the seas were rough. Well, we have our coordinates, we're following it, and we got through it. And I think it took us about 3 days to get to Mallorca. Then we need to get more supplies, and we need to get diesel. We haven't got them all. We had to leave fairly quickly, so we didn't get all the supplies we needed. And then some people, Paul, were not getting along, so we could test them during that period, especially during tough seas. And we had to let a few people go that just weren't getting along. You have to be harmonious and work together. Other people were sick. We had to leave off. So there in Mallorca, we were able to leave off people and take them in a dinghy because we anchored out. We all anchored out. We didn't go to dock. And then finally...
Is that so you wouldn't have an opportunity to be locked into the dock and not be allowed to leave? So you decided to just float together like a yacht club.
Right on target, Paul. Yeah. That's exactly right.
An old-fashioned...
You're subject to the Port Authority rules. You're still kind of subject, but since you're out of the harbor, you can get out of Dodge much quicker, and you're not subject to their rules. So some people actually left on their own volition. They simply decided, I can't deal with this. It's taking too long. It went way over. It was supposed to take maybe 15 days to do all this. And it's
stuck on a tin can floating on the high seas is not for everybody.
Exactly. And I fortunately have lots of, when I was younger, I worked on fishing boats. The first thing though, was and way out in the high seas in the Pacific, but this was a sailboat I was on, and I have sailboat experience, but my sailboat experience was the old cleat stuff, where this is a sailboat with winches. I didn't know, but I jumped in there. I was part of the crew. I helped. It was very hard. But there were issues between us too, and that had to be settled in Mallorca, and that was settled, and a couple of people left the boat. But we kept on moving. And then we go to Tunis, and then, as you know, there was a massive number of people, because now we have the Tunisians in their boats, and there were about 700 people that showed up and only 200 spots. So Thiago and a lot of people went to shore. We were all at shore. And to talk to everyone and try to explain to them, we have a selection process. And then out in harbor, before we launched, we were bombed. We were bombed. The Alma and the family boat were bombed right next to our sailboat, actually. And, there was this incendiary bomb that got very close to the diesel. I think it was targeting the diesel tank. But there were a lot of life preservers on the family, and the life preservers were completely carbonized. They're completely destroyed, but it didn't get to the diesel tank. But a lot of it was for intimidation, but still, some people left after that too, I must say. But after a while, we
Well,
got
that's a pretty violent act. I mean, to drop a bomb on a unarmed, peaceful boat, or a number of
yes,
these boats,
clearly,
using
clearly.
drones, I imagine.
Yeah, there were drones, and of course, all being investigated. You can't really prove it. We know it was drones that were either directly from the Israeli naval forces or allies with Israel. And yes, it's clearly a violation of international law, and we'll talk about that later. What went on after that, but we saw it was really more psychological warfare. You see, I talked about bureaucratic warfare first, getting out of port, and that's actually one of the most challenging things for a boat to do, even more challenging sometimes than anything else. And then we get in the seas, or we get to another port, and now we're bombed. But again, that was more psychological because the bombs were dumped on the boats in a way mainly to intimidate. I don't think anyone was killed. I think there were some injuries, or really to capacitate the boat, because the family boat held most of the
Frank,
leaders.
Frank, you're such a generous guy. I mean, injuring somebody with a improvised device of any sort would get you locked up in the United States for 10 to 20 years. So
You're
it's not a
absolutely right.
minor thing that somebody was only partly injured or something like that. You were
Well,
attacked
I
at
don't
sea.
want to make it seem
Yeah,
like it's minimus.
yeah.
It just in the scheme of things, I don't even think these people were targeted. They simply wanted to incapacitate the boats, and it's not minor if that happens in the middle of a felony of trying to scuttle the boat or destroy the boat. You're absolutely right. It's extremely serious. But Israel has been going on for years with impunity under international and any other standards. That doesn't justify what they did, but it explains how they can take a drone, hundreds and hundreds of miles from where they are. They did it in Malta, and that hasn't been absolutely proven, but it's clear they were involved in capacitating a conscience, and they did it also in the Tunis harbor. But they thought, see, this is their miscalculation, Paul. They thought they would stop us, and we'd realize this is just the beginning, and this is going to be dangerous, and a lot of people would leave. It just emboldened us more. It encrusted us more into taking off and breaking through this siege.
Okay. So we're at the point you guys leave Tunis, and this is the final run. You're like most of the way there, a few hundred more miles, and you just make a run for it. Is that how you guys thought about it?
Yeah, that's what I thought, and in fact, I didn't even want to go to any port because with the problems of getting out of port. But believe it or not, it wasn't the last port. We ended up anchoring outside of Crete. And the same thing, we needed provisions, we needed some people to go. We had some sick people on board that needed hospitalization, and we had to leave off there outside of Greece. But Greece has a long standing relationship with Israel, and they even held up a few FFC boats indefinitely. 5 boats arrived several years ago, and they wouldn't let them leave to Gaza because Israel apparently had paid them off. We were afraid of this, but we had to stop especially for the sick people. And then while we were there, we anchored out, and we sent our ribs, our dinghies, to pick up supplies and take people on and off. And so we stopped in Crete for about 2 days to also regroup. We're waiting. Remember, we got to remember, in Barcelona were the Barcelona boats, and I'm on the Barcelona contingency. Mm-hmm. We're waiting for boats from Tunis that joined us in Tunis. We're waiting for boats from Greece and from Italy to join us. So we needed to buy some time as well. We ended up rendezvousing. Some of the boats got there, and a little bit later on in international waters where we can all group together. Again, we did lose some boats in Barcelona. They weren't equipped and ready to go by the time we left, so they had to stay there, and in other ports as well. But I think we ended up with about 44 boats. Some were incapacitated at high seas, had to be towed, had to be abandoned. And we had and then later on, after we left Crete, we had another attack by the drones.
Really? What happened then?
Then our boat was. I was on the Spectre. The Spectre is one of the big motorboats. Fortunately, it got me on a bigger boat because I could do more media work and less crew work. Because when you're on a small sailboat, everyone's working almost 24/7. So on this, it's called the Spectre, and it's about the same size as the Family and the Alma, these big motorboats. And we took off, and we're about a day out of Crete when all of a sudden there was a huge explosion next to our boat, and then several big bangs up on top deck. And what it did happen is the explosion. We don't know what caused the explosion, but the big slams on the top deck, big cracks on the top deck that we heard were balls that were sent, smoke balls full of I think it was hydrogen sulfide, which is a very dangerous gas, and so people knew it was hot.
It stinks like rotten eggs, and it might make you want to run to get away from it because it smells so bad.
But if you get a big whiff of it, a small whiff, yeah, it's like rough, and it can really mess with your lungs and your nose and so forth. But if you get a big whiff of it, it can cause cardiac arrest. It can cause serious lung problems. So we didn't know what it was. That was assessed later. We just knew that there were hot balls we had to take off. So the crew went up, covered them with blankets and stuff, and threw them off deck. So about 4 or 5 of them, the family, 4 other boats were also hit. And I believe 1 or 2 sailboats were actually incapacitated. I'm not sure how that happened, if they actually burned their sails in this action, or part of the boat was penetrated by these balls and they hit the generator. I'm not sure. But so we left, we kept going actually. We obviously were in the middle of the night when that happened. They always attack at night. The Zionist entity, Israeli forces, always attack at night, so they'll have fewer eyes watching, fewer witnesses. And the interception was as well later on.
All right. And so, wow, I mean, that's about half a dozen adventures you just described to us, just getting to a position where you're a couple of 100 miles away from where you want to go. So is this when the big final rush occurred at this point, or were there more events between that and...
Now we've got the final rush. After we were bombed and grouped together outside of Crete, then even before that happened, all the captains went to the crew and the participants said, look, now's your chance. From here to Gaza, we cannot stop. So you have a chance to get off the boat. This is your last chance. And some people left. And we had all our provisions, all we could get. We were watered up. Now, we got supplies from shore, but also Alma, the Alma boat, had tons and tons of diesel and water and also provisions extra. So a lot of boats went to the Alma and got dieseled up and watered up. And even we didn't have bread, they gave us bread. So we were getting provisions from there. And then we had a big rescue ship, I haven't mentioned, a huge rescue ship that was there for emergencies, that was accompanying us, would accompany us to the orange zone. The orange zone is where the beginning of where the Israeli forces usually start intercepting, and then they would turn around and go back, just as an anecdote. Anyway, after we got bombed and we got provisioned up, we went to the Alman, got supplies and more diesel. We were on our way to Gaza directly, and no more stops.
Did you have protection? I remember reading there was Italian and Spanish ships that came to protect because there were citizens of those countries aboard.
Yeah, after we were bombed in Tunis, the Italians went ballistic. The huge revolt all over the country, and the Prime Minister Meloni, is pretty much Zionist, but he felt absolutely obliged to send an Italian naval vessel to, quotes unquote, protect us, and he did. The Spanish,
I think it's she.
Sorry?
I think it's a she, the Prime Minister of Italy.
Sorry. Yes,
that's all right. Yes. Not that it matters, but like.
No, but it does. It does. It sounds like I'm an idiot. No, Mrs. Prime Minister Meloni is a she.
You're farther from Dr. Frank Romano. You're far from an idiot. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah. So and then the Spanish, of course, are far more. The whole country, including the politicians, even not completely, are far more pro-Palestinian, at least against the genocide. Sent 2 boats. Because their people are also, I think the people are on the streets already demonstrating, but when we got bombed, I was hurt. I mean, I was so busy with media, people like you, Paul, just trying to get the word out. And again, I appreciate you doing this, that I didn't notice all the other, internal political issues, but they sent 2 boats. And Turkey sent a boat and drones, and Greece, I didn't mention it, I should have, a Greek naval vessel did, quotes unquote, protect us while we were in Greek waters, but we had left Greek waters. And however, the Turkish drones were circling around I would say, a more like an anti-drone maneuver. So we never got bombed after that.
So the Turkish Navy was protecting you.
I think, I mean, but as soon as, you know, I woke up in the morning and I got out there, and again, I'm always trying to work with the press. I mean, you folks, we can't get the word out. What we do is almost useless. So working with the press, and I looked out over the horizon. I said, I don't see any boats. And naively, I said that because it said, look, it's the orange zone, and they've all turned around. But, you know, the gesture, Paul, of just doing that, we all hoped that these ships, of at least Mediterranean countries, they would send naval vessels because, you know, we can talk about it later. It is their obligation under international law to do it, and I'll tell you why. And so we hoped, but we did not expect a single vessel to accompany, maybe a drone here and there, but not a vessel. So that was something. And so some people were depressed when they turned around because their obligation under international law, and I'll explain it, Paul, is to conduct us all the way to Gaza with humanitarian aid. But the fact is that was a first gesture, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to mobilize more naval vessels, and hopefully we can have that corridor set all the way to Gaza so these desperate people can be fed, watered, and medicated. So, but when they turned around, I knew I didn't expect them to accompany us, but we were on our own at that point.
Right. So let's it's about 2:32 here in New York in the afternoon. I'm Paul DiRienzo. My guest is Dr. Frank Romano, who was describing his experiences aboard the ships of the Global Sumud Flotilla, which attempted to bring 40 or so boats to Gaza in order to bring food and other aid to the people there who were suffering what the entire world is now calling a genocide that occurred there. And you're listening, of course, to WBAI in New York. I'm Paul DiRienzo, so I don't know if I said that. I am. And again, my guest is Dr. Frank Romano, who is a New Yorker. And I just want to take a minute because I saw the play. You're an actor, a professional actor, and you had a starring role in a recent theater production off Broadway. I went to see it. You played the role of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian, and it says here double agent during World War II. What is that? Who is? I don't want to go too far into that, but I want to know a little bit about you. You're from New York. I mean, you're from France. That's where you live, but you spent a lot of time in New York City, and you're known in New York City, and you're an actor. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who is he, and what did he mean to you briefly?
Well, first of all, I'm going to blow you away with this. Before I went to law school, I was an actor in classic French plays in Paris, like Bourgeois Gentilhomme, Molière. That's where I got my first training. And then quickly, when I went to law school, when I applied to go to law school, the actor friend said, "What are you doing that? You're an actor." I said, "What do you think a trial lawyer is?"
I was going to say that.
So anyway, going back, I love New York. It's very active, and I did a lot of author events with the book about Palestinian resistance. And then while I was doing some skits, sometimes I did some skits in New York and some poetry reading. A potential producer of the Bonhoeffer play saw me and called me up about a few weeks later and says, "Are you Frank Romano?" I said, "Yeah, who are you?" And he said, "You know, I've got a role for you to play, and it's a lead role in a Dietrich Bonhoeffer play." And I didn't know much about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, so I said, "I don't know. I'll look it up." I got back to him, says, "Yes, I'm interested, but I haven't acted in 30 years." He said, "No, but I saw you in a skit. You can do it. Come on by." So that's how it got started.
And who is Dietrich Bonhoeffer? I mean, I learned who he was from watching you play the part of him sitting there in jail and being questioned by the Gestapo. But tell us who he was briefly.
Now, he was a member of the German Secret Service working for Hitler. But in reality, he was working for the resistance against Hitler. And they found it out. I mean, he helped Jews escape to Switzerland. They didn't like that either, put him in jail. While he was in jail, they discovered that Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a participant in the Valkyrie assassination plot. Then they gave him a death sentence. So he's in prison. The play revolves around a prison scene, but there were a lot of flashbacks.
Valkyrie is the movie. I saw the movie. It was the high-level military attempt to assassinate Adolf Hitler that just failed by an inch, by a hair's breadth.
That's right. And he was a participant, but he got the death sentence. He was condemned to die. And during that time he was in jail. I just want to ask you something, Paul. Were you at the Producers Club or at the I think it was St. John?
Producers Club.
Off-Broadway one?
I'm pretty sure I saw it at the Producers Club because I just saw another show there
Producers
recently.
Club was the first one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll send you the video on the.
All
I
right.
thought the St.
Great.
John's was off
Thank
Broadway.
you.
We got a whole new cast. It was even much more intense, but I'll send that to you. Anyway, getting around to it, he got while he was in jail, the Gestapo found out that he was part of the Valkyrie Club. Now instead of being in jail for a year or so, he had a death sentence in jail. So it was an intensive role, and of course, as an activist, that resonated to me. I cannot act a role I don't believe in. I pick and choose, and this was definitely appealed to me, this role.
Right. So let's jump back to the Mediterranean Ocean, where actually this is such a great conversation and time is moving much quicker than I realized. So let's jump in. You were picked up, and what happened?
Yeah, we were picked up, and we heard before, well, we had our radios, and before we were picked up, we had to throw all our radios, our phones, and the radio, of course, VHF. We threw everything out into the ocean, including our computers. But we heard before we were intercepted, right before we got to the orange zone, that Ben Gvir, a member of the Israeli government, said that they're going to treat us like terrorists. And these Israeli officials lie a lot and this and that, and I wasn't sure. I was also threatened when I got off the gondola that the next time I come back in prison, I was in prison after the gondola, that I would get at least a third year sentence. I took the risk to do it, but here we are now going to be intercepted. We were intercepted by the Shetiyat 13. It's a very vicious, well, they're like the Navy SEALs. They're trained to kill Israeli commando. And they're the ones who intercepted the Madlin, the Handel, and we expected them to intercept us, and they did. But we trained for them. We trained not to provoke, not to make any weird actions. We were all together when they arrived with our hands up, because again, if they see something aggressive happening, they'll execute you. But pretty much got a hold, and we just saw this bright light coming at us. It's a weird, bizarre, bright, and get brighter and brighter, and finally a voice saying, come to the front of the boat. We're Israeli forces or something, and you're now under arrest. So they occupied us, but it was with them, and we stayed in our circle. They allowed us to go to the bathroom. There were no scenes of violence before they've been known to commit violence.
Well, we know what happened with Chris Smalls. I think you were a witness to what happened to Chris Smalls from the Amazon Union at the last trip.
Oh yeah, and the gondola, that was not the Global Sumud Flotilla.
Right. That was the earlier one. I interviewed you about that back then, and we do know about it at BAI. So, but it was interesting. Chris Smalls was beaten and dragged down by a number of people there at that time. But let's jump ahead. At what point, I want to know this, did Mr. Itamar Ben Gvir, the National Security Minister of Israel, show up when you were finally taken to shore by the Israeli military?
Right. Now the Shetiyat 13 delivered us to the police, and I'll tell you there was a torture there, but I'll get to that later. And then we got put in a cage inside the prison. We were taken to prison after we were processed. It took hours. And when we're all put in a cage, at least the men, I think the women were in a separate cage, we heard this hubbub and down the corridor with a lot of people, and all of a sudden Ben Gvir was there yelling out, I'm glad you're in prison, you're a terrorist anyway, you get what you deserve. And we didn't receive him very well. We chanted, Palestine mantras and so forth. That's when I first saw him, when I was in prison walking by. Apparently, however, Paul, when we were taken off the boats, the police were very rough with us. As soon as they got out of camera range, they grabbed us. They broke a guy's arm, and they were very rough. They threw us on the floor. Well, we didn't hit our heads, but they ordered us on the floor. It was very hot. It was right out in the sun, hot ground, and in a very weird position, a very difficult position. And I was there for 45 minutes, others for 2 or 3 hours, and I thought I was going to die after 30 minutes. Finally, they got to stand up, and some of us,
including women like Greta, the young Greta Thunberg, had similar type of treatment, right?
Yes, I heard very much, and I'm not sure if it was provoked at all. There was one guy I know, the one who was manhandled off the boat, and then he literally was grabbed, and they threw the arm around his back, but they sprained or broke his arm. I don't know yet. I don't have news, but he was in a sling, and then they put us all, including Greta. Everybody, parliamentarians, everybody. was bowed down on the ground and their head was hitting the hot ground for a long time, some as many as 2 or 3 hours. That was something that never happened on the Hondola, nor on the Madeleine. And so I think this is part of Ben Gavir's order to treat us like terrorists. That was difficult. And then one by one, sometimes they wrenched you off the ground with your hand behind the back. Sometimes they had me just follow somebody. They figured, well, this guy's older. I don't think he's going to hassle us. They didn't do that with me. Took us into a processing center where they processed us, wanted us to sign, wanted to submit things, and then those that wanted to get out signed papers, and they got out recently after that. We all went to prison after that, however.
Mm-hmm. And then that's where we come full circle. You were held how many days before you were dumped at the Allenby Bridge, which is where we came into this discussion?
6 days. I think it's the 6th day we were dumped to cross Allenby Bridge.
Right. And that's where we started this conversation. Great. It's 2:42. I was wondering if we could, are there any calls coming in at all? If anybody has any questions, if you're willing to take a question, if we can fit one in the next 10 minutes, our call-in number is 212-209-2877. For folks out there who know it already, 212-209-2877. Our guest, Dr. Frank Romano, who, if you've been listening for the last few minutes, was aboard the Global Sumud Flotilla and was held in an Israeli jail for somewhat like 6 days and then dumped unceremoniously into Jordan. And he was describing the attempt to get aid and assistance to the people in Gaza. How much aid were you trying to bring in? Where did that aid come from?
Yeah, several sources, all over actually, all over the world we got donations. We're talking about food, medicine, and water. And we had tons of aid. If you put all the aid together that are on the boats, they were in, packages. They weren't just strewn all over the boat. We had them in tightly knit packages. And again, I'm not sure the exact sources. They were from a lot of sources. The donations, sometimes people just sent money and we bought the aid and put them in the boxes.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to that aid and to the boats?
We don't know, and we don't know what happened to, we still had a lot of food left that we wanted to also donate to the Gazan people, food that we were eating. And the aid and the boats, we don't know what happened to any of it. But I'll tell you right now, I'm being the owner of the Hondolas, and most likely every boat owner will have a lawsuit against the Israeli government, because soon they'll be in court asking the court to allow them to confiscate the boat. So that's what they did with the Hondola. Being the owner now, I signed a power of attorney. We have what they call the Hondola lawyers, not the Hondola, but the Adola lawyers. That, by the way, when we were there in the processing center after the police took us inside after that torture moment, we got Adola lawyers, which also represented the Madeleine and the Hondola people representing us in front of the authorities there. I gave them the power of attorney to handle the case against Israel that's already requesting the legal right to confiscate the Hondola.
All right,
so
great.
Hopefully we'll proceed in those lawsuits and get the boats back.
I think we have a call come in. Did the call come through? Is that a call for us? Louis is handling the engineering so well. Thank you. Go ahead. Bring them on the air. Hi, you're on the radio. Welcome to WBAI. You got a question or a comment for Dr. Romano?
Yeah, I know there's a genocide that's going on in Gaza, and it's crazy that we allow this. But nobody talks about the genocide in Sudan. Nobody talks about the genocide in Haiti. Nobody talks about the genocide in Congo. Also, WBAI is failing about the casinos. Nobody's covering the casinos. Flushing, the Urban Institute just issued a report that the casino is going to have 50,000 Flushing and Corona residents.
Right, and I'm going to cover that on the news. I have been covering it on the news, and I'll be covering it later. All right, thank you. That's a good question. We're going to take a few calls in a row and then try and give Frank a chance to touch on them. Next call, you're on the radio. Welcome to WBAI. Hello? Are you there?
Hi, yes.
Go ahead. Question or comment for Dr. Romano?
First, I want to say that I'm very grateful to all the people who are risking their lives and their well-being by taking that journey to save the people of Gaza, to save humanity and decency. And my question, as I'm listening to you guys, I've been listening to the station for a long time now, and since maybe noon today. And the question that I wonder is, what do you guys think stopped them from killing you?
Good question. All right. Thank you very much for that, caller. Do we have any more calls on? That's it. Okay, great. Frank, you want to address those two calls?
Yeah, the second question I'm not sure. Just repeat that to me, will you?
How is it? Why do you think they didn't just kill you? She asked.
Why do you think they just?
Didn't kill you, the Israelis.
Yeah, okay. The first, both questions are excellent and absolutely right. I admit that I'm focused on Palestine for the last 20 years, going back and forth since 2005. I think I have more canal vision because I think to be more effective to fight a genocide in one country, we should converge the struggle because often it's the same enemy. It's the same money oligarchy that controls us. Israel and the United States are very much a part of it worldwide, not just those actors that are the
It all goes back to the same source, is what you're saying. It all
Sorry?
ultimately goes back to the same imperialistic source.
Exactly, and I agree what you said and implied in a very articulate way. The first question, you're absolutely right, and I'm starting to work on it now.
All
I'm
right,
starting
great.
to work on also working, even visiting these places, like for instance in Cuba and the Amazon jungle, and I intend to visit places in Africa. I've only gone to North Africa,
All right,
but this
and let me
is
jump
the
in. We're
enemy.
sort of
This
running
is
out of time. I want you to get to the second question.
Yeah.
Why don't you think they didn't kill you? Just kill you all, sink you all.
I don't know because they could have, and they get away with everything, and they could, they plant things on you all the time. They could have planted, surreptitiously with their skin divers, bombs on our boat, grenades and rifles, and then blown us up, saying that their information showed that we had arms on the boat. It means
Why don't you think they
we're
did
at war
that?
with
Why don't
Hamas.
you think they didn't do that?
Um, I'm baffled by it because I was expecting now that they could literally bomb us. It's a war zone, and there's so many boats. I mean, the Handel and the Madeline were just one boat shows, but this is a huge group and probably more difficult. And why didn't they just bomb us? I think that they were concerned with the rising, and I have to thank the media, yourself, Paul. It's in the news so much now, and the rising revolt in the world. They felt there would just be more negative than positive consequences if they did it. Otherwise, I don't think they would have hesitated.
All right, let me stop there. Again, we have a few more minutes. 212-209-2877, 212-209-2877 if you want to get a call in. And we have someone on the line right now. Question or comment for Dr. Romano?
Hey, it's Russ. You know, the reason they didn't kill you, they would have been live streaming murder if they had tried to kill you. They would have if they could have. But I want to ask your guest, Frank, what hope do we have that within 10 years, Israel can be demilitarized, disarmed, denuked, or maybe in 10 years, the illegal existence of Israel will be removed? Thank you very much.
All right. Russell, he's coming along. He used to be a lot more conservative caller. Now he's coming along to our point of view. It's the positive effect of WBAI. We have another call coming up right now. 5 more minutes. And you're on the radio in a second. You're on the air. Go ahead. Question or comment for Dr. Romano?
Yes, hello, am I on?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, oh my God. We're so pleased to hear from a hero, okay? And my question has always been, why have not the other major countries helped to travel with these boats that don't have ammunition and whatnot? Those who, like China and what have you. Why do they not help to so they won't be stopped? They come without any arm safety, and it's like almost it doesn't make sense.
All right. Very good, caller. Thank you very much. We were running out of time, so I'm going to go back to that question. Next person's on the air. Go ahead. Your question or comment. You're on the radio. Oh, we lost him. All right, great. So would you like to respond to that, Dr. Romano?
Let me respond to the second question first.
Sure.
Absolutely. I thought of the same thing. The Chinese and other countries, not just Mediterranean countries, were in the Mediterranean at one time and maybe still be with big naval vessels. And I'm baffled because the International Court of Justice decision 2024 said that Israel must not impede the flow of humanitarian aid, which makes the interception illegal and the blockade. And it obliges other countries to assure that that ruling is enforced. And so I'm surprised that but on the other hand, it's a rhetorical question in a way, because you know that they don't want a confrontation with Israel and the United States. It could develop into a World War III. But I agree with you. I really think in the future, these countries, being their obligation on the International Court of Justice decision, should be accompanying us to Gaza.
Right. So the last couple of minutes, what do you feel about this? Let me end Dr. Frank Romano, who is, as you've been listening for a while. By the way, if you miss any or want to hear the show again, you can always go to WBAI Archives. Go to WBAI.org. You'll see a click. It says Archives. You go to the archives. This show is the Pop-Up Shop show, and it began at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, so you can find it. It'll be listed there, and you can listen to it on the archives all over again from the beginning. If you missed part of it or want to hear it again, you have that opportunity. And we have Dr. Frank Romano, who is a professor of literature. Oh, we have somebody on. We're going to fit one more call on, Dr. Romano. Here you go.
Sure.
Go ahead. Question or comment? Go ahead.
Hear me?
Yes. You're on the air.
Listen, you give this segment to a fierce group of film students that are passionate, because it sounds like an adventure. It's informative, it's enlightening, and we could raise money for WBAI. This is fantastic.
Cool. Thank you. WBAI, thanks you so much. Thank you. And so, Dr. Romano, last 2 minutes, what do you think about this agreement now that's called a ceasefire that the United States has brokered with Israel and Gaza, it seems, at this point?
Now, first, just very quickly, Russell's answer to that is empires fall. And I think we see a lot of signs that the Israeli-American empire is starting to fall. As far as the ceasefire, it is really very little involvement. If you make an analogy between what happened in Ireland, where there is an analogy there with what's happening in Israel and Palestine, very little Palestinian involvement, where there's a lot of on all sides, all the factions were involved. And I think because it's excluding a lot of the Palestinians, and there's not much specifics other than the hostage, both hostage exchanges that can lead us to something specific, especially the idea at the end, kind of innocuous thought that maybe we'll think about having some type of a Palestinian state. So it's very ambiguous, very vague, and I think it's very weak.
All right, very good. We're going to keep looking at that. We're coming to the last minute. Thank you, Dr. Frank Romano, for joining us on WBAI from your home in Paris, France. You returned gratefully in one piece from your adventures. And is everybody out now?
I think from the Global Sumud Flotilla, I think everybody is out. With a caveat, there was one or two people that were, I think I've been told, but I'm not absolutely sure. God willing, they're out.
All right, very good. Anything last 10 seconds? What would you like to say?
Yeah, I just want to thank WBAI for, without you, again, we can't do anything to tell the world what's going on. And I want to invite the world to get involved and keep the momentum going with the resistance against this terrible genocide. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Romano. And I'm Paul DiRienzo. This has been the Pop-Up Shop and our program about the folks who made this courageous trip to try and bring aid to Gaza. We'll be following this on the news. I do the news 5:55 p.m. Monday through Friday, usually. I might be off a day or two here or there, but mostly 5:55 p.m. And we do these pop-up shops on occasion as well to go deeper into the issues we raise on the news. Again, my name is Paul DiRienzo. Check this show out. Go to the WBAI.org/archives, and then 2 p.m. show, pop-up shop show. You can see it and listen to it in its entirety there on our archives. Again, thank you, Keziah Glow, our program director, and Bob Henley for making this possible. And of course, Wui on the controls, who put up with a lot today, and we thank him deeply from our hearts for that work. And we'll see you soon here on the radio.